5:34 p.m. on Wednesday, July 15th, 2020. We are meeting via Zoom. The meeting is broadcast on Channel 99 via Comcast or live stream at the Nashua ETV website. We are meeting remotely pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, Section 8, and Emergency Order 12, Section 3. Mr. Guarino, when you're ready, could you please call the roll?
Okay, Mr. Guarino is here. Mrs. Johnson?
Present.
Ms. Ziem?
Present.
Ms. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Giglio?
Here.
Ms. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Raymond?
Here.
Ms. Oden?
Oh, here.
Ms. Timmons? Ms. Timmons?
Here.
Okay. All present. Oh, also with us tonight, we have Dr. Mosley. Here. We have Ms. Kinsella.
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Here.
Mr. Donovan.
Present.
We have Ms. Bernardo.
Here.
Mr. Burns.
Here.
And we have Mr. Norris.
Here.
And Mr. Gao has not yet joined us. And I think I've got everyone.
He won't be joining us tonight, okay?
Oh, Mr. Gao won't be joining us tonight. Okay. Oh, Ms. O'Gara. Ms. O'Gara.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guarino. If we have no objections, I'd like to start the evening with a moment of silence for Shay Patno, a South High student whose life was tragically lost in an accident at the end of last week. And so our thoughts and our prayers go out to his family and his friends. I know that there was a lovely vigil for him earlier this week. And so if everyone could just observe a moment of silence, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. We have a bit of a packed agenda this evening. I wanted to begin with a Chromebook update, and I think Mr. Rodriguez is here from our IT department to let us know where our Chromebooks are and give us whatever other information he has at this time. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Heather. Tara, do I have permission to share my screen? Yes, I do.
You do.
Okay, thank you. All right, does everybody see what I'm seeing right now, the Nashua School District presentation? Okay. All right, I'm Greg Rodriguez. I am the Director of Technology for the Nashua School District. So we're gonna first talk about what was distributed, what was collected, what was damaged, and what came back from summer school, or what is still after summer school. So total distributed, since we last talked in the end of the year, principals and building staff gave us their final numbers. It turned out to be 2,265. Total collected to date is 1718, and that is of this morning. We still have 547 outstanding. And out of those 1718 that were returned, 55 were damaged. So this has a little bit of an asterisk to it because Many of the Chromebooks that were repaired were using from other parts from previous Chromebooks that were damaged that we could not repair. So it was kind of we kind of Frankensteined them to make them usable again. So not total losses. So out of the 55, 25 were repaired. 17 we're still waiting for parts. And as you can see in the photo that Mr. Donovan took last Thursday, this is an example of what we're facing for a damaged Chromebook, where the keyboard and mouse and the trackpad were entirely ripped off. So this is just an example of some of the things that we're seeing. Some of them have water damage, pet damage from, and I hate to say, urine on the Chromebooks from pets. So this is just the gamut of what we're seeing. Cracked screens. So so damage beyond repair is 18, and ones that can be warranted that came back that show no visible signs of damage, no water damage, that stands at 12. So that's a that is our vendor would take those, and if they can't repair them, then we would get them back from. So summer school. So Power Scholars Academy, as the number stands right now, when I talked to Gail Casey, the number's at 38. And I have 3 asterisks with that for another note. So there's an overlap with ELL. So some of the students who are in the ELL summer school program right now have Chromebooks, and they're going to use for Power Scholars. And the same goes for extended school year. So ELL is the same thing. So they're using them as back and forth. So these are students that still have the Chromebooks from the school year, and they're using them for the summer programs. So ELL, it has 75, and the North Summer School has 9 Chromebooks being lent out right now from the school year. So what we did is we had students, if the Chromebook was in good working order, we just had them keep them for their summer school program instead of collecting them back and then reassessing and distributing them. We just made it a little easier for the families and the students with their Chromebook. So I know there's a lot of talk by not only the Nashua School District, but other districts of going one-to-one. Right now, these are just the challenges we're facing. So we don't see this as being achievable by the start of the school year. There are many obstacles, some of these that we can't control. One of them is just the sheer size of our district at the moment. So because not all Chromebooks were returned from the previous year, that's something too. So we got to take that into consideration if we do decide to roll out a one-to-one program. So since we have around a 20 to 25%, considered loss, that's something we have to consider if we're gonna roll out a program like. The collection was at the school levels. So we worked in conjunction with the building principals and the administrative staff in those buildings. So one of the challenges we're seeing about purchasing Chromebooks is sheer supply chain disruption. Since most of the Chromebooks that we get from the United States are made in China, COVID in China definitely affected the amount of Chromebooks we have. So with the manufacturer shortages, with our processors that we use, which are Intel and AMD, we got information yesterday from our vendor alone that with the models that we use, our million Chromebooks in the United States are back ordered, and it's going to be 2 to 3 months before any shipments start on that million back. So that's just to put into perspective what we're facing. And some of the things that we have in our district right now that we can control, that we can phase in over time and improve over time, is our infrastructure. Right now at the high schools, we are moving forward with our switches. We are moving forward with the access points to allow, a significant increase in connection for wireless. So, and since Chromebooks are entirely wireless, this would be fine in the high schools, but the middle and elementary schools would struggle with a one-to-one model because we just don't have we just don't have the capable devices to support a complete one-to-one yet. We also have budget implications. So this is, now that we're in COVID, this is immediate priority. While we're looking at this as immediate priorities, we also have to think of the long-term priorities as well. So is this a Band-Aid for now, or is this something we really want to weave into the fabric of the district and curriculum. So we would, if let's just say we were to get Chromebooks tomorrow, all whatever number that is in the thousands, it would take a tremendous effort to enroll, receive, manage, and distribute all the devices. So just in March alone, it took us an entire week just to get 600 Chromebooks enrolled with the entire IT department of 14 out to the rest of the district, and that was all other operations stopping to get this done. So that's just something. So we had to drop a lot of things to get this going, just to stand up remote learning. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all the building staff and the teachers and the principals and the assistant principals. We really couldn't have done this without them. Their work was instrumental to making remote learning for the IT department and for the district possible. One of the things I think we should address as a group that other districts have used is imposing a technology fee. Not all students in the district. I do understand that a lot of our students are low income, who receive free and reduced lunch. But maybe we think about a fee in the future just to offset the repair costs and the replacement of damaged or lost Chromebooks. So. I also think we should look at knowing our limitations as a district. Like I said, I know there's an urgency, with the time of going one-to-one, but not everything is possible at the moment. We are trying to work through things as a department in the district to see if we can make this happen. And that if we look at a 3 to 12 model or include the K through 2, we're not sure. So we're going to really examine what that could look like and really talk about that. Back in, I think, late May, Ms. Brown sent Mr. Donovan and I an email on about options of what we could do to purchase Chromebooks and what our options are. I'm just going to run through those options pretty quickly. So the first option is to buy all new Chromebooks. So this $220 would include the actual Chromebook cost and the license, and that would be roughly 11,000 Chromebooks at a cost of $2.42 million. And like I said before, just with the back order right now, this would not be feasible. Option 2 would make up the current difference of our Chromebooks. So 3,300 Chromebooks at $220 would be $726,000. As I addressed in a previous financial and ops meeting early in the year, 3,100 Chromebooks are going to be expiring next fall, and another almost 2,500 are going to be expiring in the fall of 2022. So these are the things that we have to think about when we're going. So we're going to be replacing, a little over 5,500 along with just to make that option viable as well in the next coming years. Option 3 would be a purchase over a 3-year time. Mr. Donovan and I came up with this model right here for fiscal year 2021 would be to purchase 3,300 Chromebooks at the cost of $726,000 with the one-time money. And then in the same year, we looked to purchase another 3,140 Chromebooks at a cost of $690,800 with the CARES Act. And in fiscal year 21-22, purchase roughly 2,500 at the cost of $539,660 using the operating budget. Option 4 would be using one-time funds and/or CARES Act as a down payment. So what you do is you sign a 4 or 5 year contract with a company, and you get a steady supply of Chromebooks for 5 years. Mr. Donovan and I have talked about this option. It would put a set cost into the operating budget. And Mr. Donovan, feel free to jump in anytime if you want to add anything to that. Okay. So looking at the 5-year sustainability of a one-to-one program. So one of the good things about Chromebooks is that they're inexpensive. They're inexpensive to repair. In most cases, as you can see, the Chromebook with the keyboard and the trackpad being ripped off. How we do view a Chromebook, though, it is a short life device, and they are disposable just because you know, that's both the good thing and the bad thing of them. So just because they are inexpensive, they're not as durable. So one of the things that is another thing that's great about Chromebooks is that they work well with Google Classroom. So that's what we use as our learning management system, or LMS, throughout remote learning from March to the end of the year. And so after doing some reading and from some articles, what is found is that Chromebooks do stimulate students' desire to learn tech. And that, I think that's important. If we're going to integrate technology into a curriculum in a K to 12, this is definitely a tool that we can use to achieve that goal. Right now, Chromebooks are used in every classroom, and they're woven into the fabric of the curriculum. You know, as a former assistant systems administrator for the Nashua School District, you would go to every room, and the students would be, you know, on a Chromebook at some period of time in the day. So I don't think teachers 100% rely on them, because there's something you said about, you know, pen and paper learning and instructing from the class, but this is used as a tool. The cons about using the Chromebooks is the life of the device is roughly 5 years, which is significantly less than our computers right now. And like I said, they're not that durable, so they do break really easily, and not all of them can be repaired. As I demonstrated in the previous slide, not all of them are returned when they are borrowed. So we're looking at a 20% loss around that area every year. I don't think we can sustain that as a district without, you know, passing the cost onto somebody else through insurance, or imposing a technology fee. So that's something we have to consider. And the return on investment for repairing aging models. So we have 2 models that are aging out, but they're still very usable. Is it worth paying $40 for an $80 Chromebook? That's discussions we have all the time in the IT department. There's a constant need to refresh these devices. Like I said before, not very durable. And with every model that comes in, there is a different part for every year. So whereas a desktop, let's say, you can usually interchange parts, because the hardware usually stays the same inside of a desktop. But with Chromebooks, a screen does not necessarily fit the screen of the following year. So these are the things that are limitations, and they are internet-only devices, which means they only can survive if they have an internet. With the Chromebooks coming in and the sheer amount, we would really have to address our current infrastructure. As I said before, the high schools will be up to date by the end of the summer, but we would face a challenge with our middle and elementary schools. As part of this budget year, we did address the patch panel issue with the very brittle patch panels as part of the budget process. So we were able to achieve that in the elementary schools, and that project is going on right now. So that part would be taken care of. That would be a phase 1 approach to upgrading our infrastructure at the elementary schools. Phase 2 we want to make it as model it after the high schools as closely as possible, because that's going to be state-of-the-art equipment with our switching and state-of-the-art equipment with our wireless. So the middle schools, this is really going to be contingent on the JSSBC, and the cost of just hardware alone and not actual man hours and implementing would be roughly $280,000. So with E-rate, these numbers would go down, just because we do have a discount rate with, you know, considering our school lunch program and that percentage. So we would see a 60% reduction in that, depending, you know, on how we want to move forward with this. So we would want to make our access points, which hold our wireless environment, the same from the high schools all the way down to the elementary schools. So connectivity would be seamless and pretty awesome, to not to mince words. So we would also have to look at our fiber situation too. So fiber is what is used to connect all the buildings within the district, but it's also what we use to connect our closets together within the building. So we also need to look at our our fiber infrastructure, and we would need to split it out amongst vendors, because our fiber in the buildings is around 20 to 30 years old, and they can't support newer technology. So these are all things that we have to think of when going one-to-one as well. So going back to about 6 months ago, we do have to talk about expiring Chromebooks. So we do have a constant need to refresh. Like I said, in September of 2021, we have 3,140 Chromebooks leaving, not being able to be used anymore. And then in September 2022, another 2,500. But after that, there's a 4-year gap because Google has recognized and the vendors have recognized that the lifespan cannot be what it is right now. Although the auto expiration date would be 6 years from now, these devices typically don't last that long because, like I said, they're not as durable. So, really having the students take care of the devices as much as they can. We do understand that they get dropped, book bags do get slammed on them. That they are, they're pretty delicate. So, this is just another implication of what we're going to face. So, out of the 1188 that are coming in 2026, I'm not sure how many will survive to that point. Theoretically, they should be able to, but my department will do the repairs as well to the best of our ability. So, we also have to, if we're going to do this, we have to shift our learning from a binary classroom with pen and paper to, and as we're looking towards a kind of like a remote and classroom as well. So learning doesn't just stop in the classroom. It continues with the additional devices and infrastructure. We would also need additional staff to manage these extra devices. We're talking roughly 4,000 extra devices. That would be a tremendous load. What my staff already has right now. I would need at least 2 more assistant systems administrators to man these devices to support the schools. And with the additional load on the network, another network administrator to handle the additional network load along Steve Wanty. That is all I have for my presentation.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Rodriguez. That was incredibly thorough.
Thank you.
I'm curious about whether or not Mr. Donovan will be presenting the options that you showed us at the budget meeting next week, or if that's something that will be discussed as the remote learning task force moves forward. Do you know the answer, or Dr. Mosley or Mr. Donovan?
Oh, we can discuss that at the budget meeting if you'd like. Since the 2.9 number got reduced to 2.2, so certainly something we can discuss at the budget meeting.
Okay, because I believe some of that stuff we have to have the aldermen actually have to approve it with a motion there in order for us to actually do purchases.
Correct.
So
That's correct.
I know you said they're on back order for like 2 or 3 months, but does that mean that if we ordered them now, it would be 3 months, or we should wait and order them later, or then it would be 2 or 3 months after that?
It's changing every day as districts are getting closer to the school year starting. The back order it's always increasing because schools are like we are still trying to figure out a plan on what we're going to do to go back. And as we know, it's a fluid situation. We don't know what food you're facing in 2 months from now. If COVID cases are going to, rise in New Hampshire, what does that mean for us? So, I think this is something that leadership would talk about, and certainly with Dr. Mosley and Mr. Donovan and Dr. McKinney.
All right, thank you. I have a high level of anxiety about this. All right, Ms. Giglio indicated in the chat that she had a question, and then I saw Ms. Timmons' hand. Did I miss anybody else? All right, we'll do Ms. Giglio, Ms. Timmons, Dr. Mosley, and then Ms. Brown.
I just have a couple of quick questions, and you may have already covered this, but during the spring, when we put a Chromebook into every family's house, did that start with grade 3? I mean, we weren't providing them to preschool kids, were we?
We were, yes.
We were, okay.
Yes.
So it was from preschool all the way to grade 12.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And then I have a suggestion on when we get to one-to-one, if we could understanding that our free and reduced lunch people probably would not need to give us a deposit. But what if the deposit was refundable at the end of the year if it was returned in prime condition?
I think that's a great option too. I think it would give a carrot to people returning their Chromebooks and not experiencing a 20% loss. But yeah, I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay, and I just had one other question is, if we go to a hybrid model at some point in the next few months, but we have given out all of our Chromebooks for those people who are at home doing the remote learning, are we going to have enough in the schools to actually use during the in-school portion of learning?
That's something we certainly have to talk about as a team. I think students would bring it from home to school.
Oh, they could,
Yeah, they could bring it both. So,
yeah.
and this is based on need. So I just want to say this is based on need. The initial lent out at the end of March was around 1,700. So then we had some damage that came back, some that just didn't work. So and we brought them back to the district, and principals were handing them out as well. So and let's say I was in the Nashua School District, I wouldn't really have a need to have my student or my son or daughter, need a Chromebook. So those are things. I don't think every family is going to need a Chromebook. And we did address that in a survey that we sent out in mid-March, asking families their need of a Chromebook handed.
So if the families have technology at home, they can still access Google Classroom.
Absolutely. Yep. They would just need to sign in with their NSD42 account. Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Mr. Rodriguez.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giglio. Ms. Timmons?
I think you're muted, Ms. Timmons.
Ms. Timmons, you're on mute. Missed everything. Sorry.
I'll answer that question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the slideshow. Sorry, because I already said what I was going to say now. Okay, you gave us 4 options, and one of them is leasing on a one-term fund, the CARES Act. Yep. Can you explain that a little further? Because it seemed like it's not a real option. I think if you give us 4 options, one is that we can use funds on the CARES Act, then that's not an option. Did I read that correctly? On the options that you put up.
Yeah, I think we're going to use 2 different types. Let me just bring up the slide for myself. It would be a leasing. You're talking about option 4, the leasing of devices, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. So we would use the one-time funds from the state and or the CARES Act as sort of a down payment to make to offset the cost of the operating budget for the next 4 or 5 years. Am I right, Mr. Donovan, with that?
Yes, that would be the plan, sort of like what will come up later tonight, the copiers and how we're going to spread it out evenly. The problem that we have now with the Chromebooks is there's these large expenses on certain years, and there's very little on other years. So the whole idea of the leasing program is to even that off.
And then we still have to choose one of the other 3 options. Well, option number 1 probably out of the question, but the option 2 or 3.
We only need to choose one of those 4 options. So it depends on which way you want to go.
Okay, but you can't choose 2. You can't choose the number 4 first and then use let's say option number 3 to offset that.
If we did use option number 4, it would be a steady flow of devices. So that would be we would get the devices and we'd pay it off in 4 years. So it's kind of like you're financing an auto loan or a house or something. So that's what I guess I do.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Timmons. I have Dr. Mosley.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I believe, and we talked about this in the admin meeting, and I think Greg was alluded to this. And we've already lost about 500 computers through our current lending program this past year. We're also anticipating some of those computers expiring because of the site licensing. So with that said, we are anticipating putting an order within soon. Not because we're rushing, but also we recognize that we have to cycle in some of the computers, number 1, but also number 2, it's going to take 2 to 3 months, and I would say 3 months if not longer, to get those computers in. So I just want to alert the boards that we're not going to wait 2 to 3 months before we actually place our initial order. So, we'll start off and we're ballparking somewhere between making a placement order of about 2,000 to 3,000 computers now, so that by the time we get going here, whether it's 2 or 3 months later, we'll have those computers in to at least start to phase it in slowly. So I just don't know if that was clear, or certainly I think it's important for the public and the board to know that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mosley. Ms. Brown and then Mr. Norris.
You, Heather and Greg. Well, I think the backlog on Chromebooks is pretty indicative on.
Ms. Brown,
Oh.
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty hearing you. I don't know if it's just my computer or.
Is this better?
Oh, much. Thank you.
All right, sorry.
I was
about
straining a little bit.
that. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I think the backlog on Chromebooks is really indicative of how the education community recognizes the importance of a 1-to-1 ratio for necessity for successful remote learning. So I think that's something to really be taken into consideration as we move forward in that avenue. But you also brought up the slide about the extra staff necessary and the cost and human capital on servicing those computers and making sure everything's set up. Is there any educational value in having maybe CTE students or students that are taking computer classes? Would they benefit at all from maybe helping in that process and also help be more cost effective for the district? Would they've learned something from that experience?
Short answer, I don't know. That's a great question. The thing is we're trained to do these things, and these devices don't come on the cheap, especially when we're facing a shortage. So if we're going to repair them, we feel that we have the ownership to repair it, I guess, right the first time. I'm not saying that a CTE student wouldn't be able to do that, but I think we trust our staff to do that, especially with school-owned devices. That would just be my stance as department. Since we're in a shortage as it is, I'd want to make sure that when we do get them in, and then when they do get repaired, that they're going to be repaired quickly, because we know how to do it. We know how to do it quickly. You repair one Chromebook and one thing, you can pretty much do it again even faster the next time. So, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that perspective.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Norris.
Thank you. So you already kind of touched on this a little bit, but so the idea of a 1-to-1, we've been talking about, I know, the 11,000 students or whatever. Is that number, I know you said you touched on it before, but is that taking into consideration the kids who really don't need a laptop? Like, what do you think it would be more of a possibility of achieving a 1-to-1 by the beginning of the school year if, say, we opted, if you have a computer already, your own personal computer or whatever, we don't give you a Chromebook until, say, we get the back order or whatever down the road, but we would be able to have everybody get a device at the beginning of the school year if we had those kids use their own devices for a certain amount of time, or?
Yes and no. So if we do go down that route, we got to make sure that we do keep a fair amount of spare Chromebooks at each location. So just because of what we saw, let's just anticipate a 20% spare ratio that would need, and that's total from the district. So let's say we do get we do pass out the 7,300 or so Chromebooks that we currently have right now. We'd want to keep 20% of that number on reserve, so around 1,400 to 1,500 on reserve, just in every location. Just because we know how they break, we know what we face. There were some families that cycled through 3 Chromebooks, and this is just the reality of what we're facing right now. So a significant amount of spares to also achieve. So not just the 11,000 students, but maybe 13,000 to 14,000 total in our possession to actually make this sustainable thing. Because that's one thing we don't do. We don't want to be able to give a student a Chromebook and then say, sorry, we ran out because we gave every single one out of and then where are we then? So it's definitely an option that we have to look at, but keeping spares is definitely something that we would have to have a limit on what school, how many Chromebooks go up for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I want to touch on the subject of the Chromebooks that are having problems that are getting destroyed.
Mhm.
So what happens if we have a school year that we're remoting the whole year and a family goes through 2, 3, 4 Chromebooks that are being destroyed? What are we going to do? Because that's the damaging property, and now it's being taken away from somebody else who might need that Chromebook. And I know that you said 18 of them were damaged beyond repair.
Mhm.
So I guess my question is, what happens with that? Who pays for that when it's damaged beyond repair? I'm not going to call the Chrome police here, but I mean that,
You're more than welcome to.
you know, it's the problem is that people have to be responsible for these books, these Chromebooks. Somebody paid for them. And if they need another one and they keep destroying them, we can't keep giving them out. So I need to get an idea on that.
I think, and this is my opinion, but I think this is something that should be handled at the building level, with technology. So we could set limits on what is damaged, and how many, not really an allowance per family, but these are devices, these are school properties. If a book, if a book is ripped in half, what happens? How does that go to a school? How does that go to the building administrator? How do they deal with that? So I think the same goes along with a Chromebook. So I probably look towards the building principals, for disciplinary actions with that. That's my opinion to that, with that question.
Well, I guess my question is, who can better tell me at this point, and let anybody in the public that's watching this too, because we've heard that the mayor said it's going to be a very tough year, and revenues aren't going to be coming in, and that's going to be put on to the residential taxpayers, and the residential taxpayer is going to be picking up more and more of the burden of this, and a lot of us can't afford it because we've lost our jobs or just getting back to work. So I think this is an important question. If I can't get an answer now, I'd appreciate it if we can get it somewhere in our package. Someone can give this as information. And also, I guess my question is to Mr. Donovan. These additional, Brown touched on this, these 3 additional employees, where are we going to find the money in the budget for this? And given the fact that, again, who knows what's going to happen mid-year? I mean, things can either get better or they can fall apart completely as time goes on. Because right now, we haven't heard how much money the city has collected in taxes, because taxes was just due. So I'd appreciate if we can get this information prior within the next week or so. It would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Did anyone else have a question for Mr. Rodriguez? Okay, I have one question, just kind of to follow up. I know your slideshow was pretty clear about we can't have a one-to-one now. What is our current situation? Like, for example, if a family has 4 children and no devices, how many did we lend out in that case?
It was around 2 to 3. Yeah, it was. We put this together hastily. I'll fully admit it. This was a week and a half of going with a decision and then running with it. Like that's what we did. And
you have to.
Yeah, we had to.
700 in a week is. I mean, that must have been all you did for like 10 hours a day.
That's all we did. That's all we did. So when to think about, when we have this, when we talk about this, as not just in the IT, but as a district, we gotta really look toward what we can do to identify family needs too, because parents have their own computing devices that they're going to do if they're going to have to work remote again, and if they're sharing resources with their child, we don't want that. We don't want that to happen. We also don't want to give too many devices within the family to take away from another. And I know, just speaking with Dr. McKinney, We don't want to keep students on a Chromebook for 8 hours a day. That's just not sustainable, and it gives too much fatigue for the teacher and the student. So those are the things that I think as a technology department we have expectations clear this time, more clear and solidified expectations of what can be handed out, to the schools, because we had the building principals use their discretion before, and I think they did a great job with it. They identified the need, they saw what went out, they saw what was needed, and totally went with that. And I'm totally fine with that. But I think with just a little bit more discussion, we can really fine tune this process if we're going to go back to that level of construction.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the thought and planning that has gone into developing the slides that you shared with us, but also that you're putting into the subgroups and the task force to plan for our options for September. We all want our kids to have the best shot. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay. All right. So I think I can release you. Thank
Excellent.
you for coming out this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. I could do this all the time. I won't, I promise.
You can come to every meeting. I'm cool with that.
All right. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. So I'd like to have the consent of the board. Mr. Burns is here on the Zoom, and he has an update about graduation. I have it on the agenda under unfinished business, but if there are no objections, I'd like to let Mr. Burns go ahead and give his update now. Does anyone object? I see a couple thumbs ups and some noddings and no objections. So Mr. Burns, the floor is yours.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to provide a quick update to everybody about where we're at north and south for our in-person ceremony. So as we said all along from as we were planning our virtual graduation, that the goal was to, when it was safe to do so, hold an in-person ceremony for our class of 2020 graduates. I think it's really important that we recognize everything that they've done, and I think it'll be a great opportunity for us to see them in person and celebrate their successes before they leave. So at this point, we identified August 1st as our ceremony date. We have our inclement weather date of August 2nd. So the plan is to hold things rain or shine, but if we have thunderstorms or something where safety is compromised, certainly move it to the 2nd. And the plan would be to let people know the day before. The way that we're going to do it is we're going to, north will be exclusively at Holman Stadium, and then south would be over at Stello Stadium. And we'd be dividing up our class into 2 smaller groups so that we can promote social distancing a little bit better. So half of the alphabet would go in the morning at an 8 a.m. ceremony, and then we'd be able to clean in between and get everybody out of the facility, welcome the next group of guests in and line up our students, and then do a second ceremony for the last half of the alphabet at 12 o'clock. And we significantly limit the number of guests that students could bring. So initially we were talking about 2 guests per family, but we recognized that a lot of our families might have multiple people in their homes and might have split families. So we wanted to make sure that we were allowing them to get as many people in as they possibly could. So we've upped that to 4 people. We work closely with Park Rec and applied through our permits to make sure that we were going to be able to be under the capacity at each of these facilities as well. So everybody was okay with that. So at this point, we're going to have 4 guests per graduate. Staff at North and South are going to work with staff at Stellos and staff at Holman to set up seating arrangements. So that way there we can promote social distancing there. And also make sure that students are lining up, that they're not congregating in small groups, that they're standing 6 feet apart at all times, that they're going to march in at that. And then we also have set traffic patterns for students as they walk into the group, as they go and get their photo taken prior to going on stage, their photo for on stage, getting their diploma, and walking back to their seat. We really want to minimize the interactions that we have for these kids. I think the difficulty that we're seeing is we're not going to be able to have a rehearsal. So Keith and I are working on a PowerPoint where we're going to talk over each of them, one for North, one for South. And then we'll provide that to students as well. So that way they can at least visualize what we're doing before they get there. And we'll also have staff members that are going to help guide our students along through that process. Typically, we run a rehearsal during the week leading up to graduation for our in-person ceremony at Snow Arena. We do that at school, but it's just not feasible at this point to be able to pull that off and do the graduation, and we don't want to jeopardize anybody's safety. Ceremony is going to be a little bit shorter than what we typically do. So we've already done our virtual graduation. Student speakers have had their opportunity to speak. Class officers have spoken. Our faculty speaker spoke. Typically, we run through all those things. Those can be downloaded and viewed at any time at this point, and students can save those. And we're also actually going to create copies for any student that would like their student speech. So any of our class speakers or faculty speaker will get a copy of that. But in order to keep these ceremonies a little bit quicker, get everybody in and out of the facility, make sure that we can clean everything and disinfect everything in between. We're just going to go with basically a quick overview. So it'll be procession, quick welcome. The students' names will be called as they come across the stage. Then we'll do the conferring of the diploma, and then we'll do the recessional out of the facility. And then we are not allowing, we have strict expectations and guidelines for our students, for our guests, for our staff members. So we're not encouraging students to congregate, take photos with their friends and relatives and families at the facility. We're really going to kind of force the issue of getting them out of the facilities as quickly as possible, out of the parking lot, so that we can clear it and get things ready for the next ceremony. So Keith and I sent information out to families last week. We're going to continue to update them and communicate with them as we get closer to the ceremony, and also send information directly to the students through their NSD accounts, so that they've got the information in case their parents' emails aren't working or anything like that. They can go through NSD and check on that as well. That's about all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. What about the Nashua mask ordinance? Will that be enforced?
Yes, good question. So Nashua mask ordinance will be enforced. And we're going to be providing masks to all of our students and staff at the facility. So there'll be North masks for the North students, South masks for the South students.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So
in years past, the board has been part of the graduations. Is that the plan this year, or did you want to do a board-free graduation? What's the plan for that?
So we had talked a little bit about that. I don't know if Jamal, Dr. Mosley, wants to speak to that, or.
I just want to be what we've just, including myself and the assistant superintendent, and about 2 years ago, we've just observed the graduation. We've never participated in it. So I still think we can social distance and observe the graduations. I don't think there's an issue with that. I just think we have to be careful that we're not going to be sitting next to each other as we normally did when we did it. But I would say that the board is welcome to attend. There will be an area in which you can, I would say, I hate to use the word sit, but maybe stand or just observe. But just for the new members, we've never, including myself, participated in graduation. It's typically a high school administrative function. Is that what you were referring to, Ms. Raymond? I wasn't sure.
Yes, I wasn't clear. We typically just sit on the stage and clap and enjoy the process. So it's one of my favorite things, especially the adult ed graduation. I feel like, and the summer school graduation, those are some of my favorite events that the board is privileged to attend. So I was curious.
I'll take it back. We actually do participate. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's coming to me now. It's been some time. It's been a year. Excuse me. We typically, the board president, I think you and I shook hands with the graduates last year. So we're not going to be shaking hands and congratulating kids. Is that fair enough? We'll just be waving and saying congratulations, but we're not going to be shaking hands. I don't think anyone's shaking hands, Nate, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the plan right now is to really minimize the number of people on the stage and have the interaction. So the assistant principals would be calling the names of the students that they work with. And then we would have, I would be standing on stage at North, Keith would be at South. The student would walk across the stage, stand 6 feet apart from us. We'll have a backdrop for North, backdrop for South, and then also the diploma jacket in between us. We'd snap the picture, and then the student would walk off. So we're really trying to make sure that, we're not allowing any interaction or really minimizing the number of people on the stage and around anybody in the hopes of that. And Ms. Raymond, you talked to summer school graduation and adult ed. So those students are also going to have the opportunity to participate with us. We're trying to do a citywide graduation. So any student that is a part of adult ed or summer school that goes to North would attend the North ceremony. South students would attend South, and then any of our area students are going to also join us at the North ceremony, and we'll recognize them during that time as well.
Oh, excellent. I'm very excited to hear that they're being integrated into the graduation. I think that's a fabulous idea. Okay, I saw Ms. Johnson's hand, and Ms. Oden also indicated that she had a question. So, Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. I'm delighted to hear that we're finally going to have a graduation for our students. And I'm so glad to hear that they're splitting it up between the two facilities, Pullman and Stellos. I know I suggested that back when in April, May, probably even into the beginning of June, that North goes to Holman, the South goes to Stellos. I like the way you're splitting it up by the alphabet, half in the morning, half in the afternoon. And I just want to wish our graduates hopefully they won't have a rain date, that they can finally do it on August 1st. So they have their time, their day in the sun, literally now. So I'm very happy to hear this. Thank you very much.
I agree. We couldn't be happier.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Oden?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Nate. I know this is a tremendous amount of work anyway, and you've done it twice. I've watched the videos. They were just excellent. I have a question. I think it was North that I saw the hours. One graduation would be at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the second one would be 12 o'clock. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
both North and South are doing them at the same time, just at the opposite locations.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Okay, I was going to ask, are they at the same time? Thank you so much, and to your cohort there, Keith. Thank you, because you have done twice the work, and I know how much time this has taken. But quite frankly, after looking at the videos, I think those kids are going to appreciate those tremendously as they get older. So thank you for all your work. Hope we have good weather.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that.
Tell me about it.
Okay, does anyone else have a question for Mr. Burns? I don't see any hands. So Mr. Burns, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to share all of these details with us. And as Ms. Oden said, all the hard work that you and Mr. Richard have done.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, you too. I muted myself for no reason. Okay, moving on the agenda. We are now at the point of the consent agenda, which is the second item on our agenda. I am looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay, by Ms. Brown. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Guarino. Any discussion? No? All right. Mr. Guarino, could you please call the roll?
Okay, on the motion to approve the consent agenda, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Ziem? Ms. Ziem?
She said yes, I heard it.
Okay. Okay, I heard it. I gotcha. Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Gilio?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Do we have any communications outside the consent agenda this evening? All right, seeing none, it's time for the superintendent's comments. Dr. Mosley?
I'll be quick and fast. We ended school on June 15th, and just want to wish everyone a happy summer and time, and happy 4th of past July, so to speak. During that time, from the last day of school all the way up until this week, we have been working in the collective we, I shouldn't say we, But our faculty, staff, parents, community members have been working in subgroups connected to our reopening task force. We collected that data on Thursday. We still have a couple of groups out there that are going to get that to us. But I just want to thank all of the faculty and everyone for their hard work on doing that. On Monday, as many of you know, on Monday, July 13th, we had a work session with the board around reopening and what that feels and looks like, and just giving an update. There was another update coming up sometime in the next 2 weeks to the board, but we also just want to let the public know that we are working diligently and collaborating on the best plan moving forward. I'd like to publicly thank Bobby Bagley for all of her guidance and work. For those who do not know Bobby Bagley, she is the Director of Public Health for the City of Nashua. She was very instrumental in helping us make some determinations on what is the best model to eliminate as of right now, but also moving forward. She made this suggestion to us that we table or eliminate going in person to the public for now, as the cases of COVID-19 continue to have a slight uptick, but also the demographics of what that feels and looks like as well. Bobby is, I think Bobby probably tired of me calling her, but I just want to say thank you so much for all of the work that she's done, and not just with the schools, but for the city. She's also part of our task force as well, and she's continued to advise us and the public on the best course of action to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Yesterday, we had our a reopening task force committee meeting. That means all of us, all 26 of us. We met at 1 o'clock yesterday. We talked a little bit about the data. We also talked about our scheduling and what that feels and looks like. Right now, our principals are starting to generate drafts of a hybrid schedule. I say draft of a hybrid schedule. And then once those schedules are drafted, we're going to bring that back to the reopening task force. And when this is the phrase I use for filtering, or get their feedback on what they believe. Some of the maybe we missed something, maybe some ideas to enhance it. And I think that's very important to start to use the task force as a filter and as a sounding board too for our faculty to understand, for our principals to make the best schedule possible, or the best hybrid schedule possible for our kids. I would like to say that I want to thank all of the principals for their time. In addition to all of this, as you saw today, there's graduation coming up at the end of the month. I just hope, I'm pretty sure Nate and Keith and everyone at the high school are just hoping that it's just there's one person or one factor is always Mother Nature. The goal, I just want to jump back to the task force. Our intent, I say I'm looking at Sharon too, but our intent is to make sure that we have some form of recommendation to the board to consider for reopening by that first week in August, and we're looking forward to that. So it's the summertime. I just would like to leave with some final thoughts for our kids. Just be safe out there. Make sure that I know it's the summer months, and understand that just when make sure you continue to practice social distancing. Please make sure that you're wearing your mask and just be safe out there. That's all I have to say for the superintendent.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mosley. Does anyone have a response to Dr. Mosley's comments? Yes, go ahead, Ms. Giglio.
Okay, relative to the information that we got tonight on graduation, I just want to thank Dr. Mosley, because going way back to when the pandemic hit and we closed, he had said all along that when it was possible to have an in-person graduation, we would do it. And now it's going to become a reality. And I want to thank him for sticking with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giglio. Does anyone else have a response? I think Ms. Zeem is trying to say something, but her mute keeps going on and off. Ms. Zeem?
Poor Mrs. Zeem. Oh.
Yes.
Nope. I had you for a second and then it started blinking again.
Poor Mrs. Zeem.
I don't know why her mute doesn't stay off.
Do I just
Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I have to admit, a lot of this problem is the user. That would be my daughter. I can blame her. Anyway, my question is, I'm hearing from a lot of parents that now they are considering whether to stay at the public school or go to private schools. And one of the things that they're asking me is what are any significant changes that might happen to the remote learning? And I don't know if there is any significance that you can share yet, but I thought I would ask if there is, if you would want to share that. If we're not ready to do that, I understand that as well. But I did want those parents to know that I care about helping them make the decision, because I can appreciate the anxiety. This is not a fun time for any of us. That's it.
I can answer it. Sometimes I feel like I talk too much with this, and I want to make sure that Sharon. So Sharon, would you like to give the answer, because I feel like you and I are partners on this one, but I can talk.
Sure. With the information that came back from the subgroups, one of which was looking into remote learning, we're looking at all that information. It's been compiled, and considerations for professional development and what remote learning might look like differently from when we had to put it together in a week and a half is certainly a consideration. And we should, by the night of August 3rd, we should be presenting to the board, the task force should be presenting to the board our plan for reopening. So that if the parents are asking, when are we going to know? Right now, that's the date that we'll be voting on whatever proposal is put forward.
Thank you very much. I just think they're as anxious. It's just, the anxiety is just so heavy. And I can appreciate that it makes you impatient. And unfortunately, sometimes we share that impatience unnecessarily. But so I'm hoping that this will help them to be, and August 3rd, that's not long. I hope we can wait that long. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ziem. Ms. Oden, and then Mr. Guarino.
Oh, thank you. I have a couple of questions. We're getting an awful lot of emails, and a lot of people say, can you forward this to the task force? Is it my understanding that everything that comes to the board that has to do with this goes automatically to the task force?
I'm not sure what.
Well, people are saying, I want my children to go back, or there's no way I want schools to open. We had a suggestion today from somebody that said, have you thought about going back after Labor Day to give us a little bit more time? Are those suggestions, comments, and thoughts going to the task force without us forwarding it to Sharon or to you?
I didn't read. I've seen several communications. I didn't see the one today, but we have seen several communications around ideas around whether we stay remote or go back full time. So I guess my question is, we considered both of them, and we considered all of them. Are we forwarding every single email that comes to the board to the task force? I have not been. I know that Sharon has been very diligent responding back to them and just making sure that we're acknowledging that they are their thoughts are being heard. And I would even say that, Dottie, to the point, I haven't read the email today, but all options are on the table. I think we're looking at this through a variety of lenses. Number one, it's students first, students and their safety. Number two, we've also heard some feedback from the union too, and teachers who've also expressed some concerns about coming, like going back to school. And we've also heard that directly and also to the board as well. We've also heard parents and also teachers who have family members and also personal health conditions in which they have had some concerns. So all of those are being considered. We haven't individually forwarded to the task force themselves, but certainly I don't want to leave anything off the table. What we have done is that we've received articles and different I would say literature out there about reopening. We certainly have created a repository to house that. We always have to be careful only because some of the sources can be opinions. Some of the resources that people have shared with us, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's germane to our district. For example, there are districts that have already, in some form or another, created a reopening plan already, and I commend those districts for all their work and what have you. But we're a district of 11,000 kids with 67 different languages spoken, and 1,100 ELL kids, and I think 2,500 special education kids. And I think we've got another 500 kids who are out of district placed. So we have to just be careful. Like some of the articles that we receive, I'd say some of them are germane to us, a couple of pages, but sometimes we're unique in that way. I will say that we have received, and I think there was a question that popped up, well, what have you been looking at? We do look at districts that mirror us. For example, Manchester, we've been looking at Lowell. We've also got some research from, I know Sharon works in Massachusetts, and certainly we have looked at the literature coming out of there as well. But nothing's off the table, Ms. Odom. Please, it's helpful to send it to us directly so we can start to make sense of the data. But we've also heard that suggestion that you're mentioning around starting or having some type of delay. I mean, that's been shared actually at the task force level as well with the data. You go that's all. If you have, it's a lot of data out there, but some of the subgroups actually said those exact made that exact recommendation. Is that fair enough, Sharon?
Yes. And also, and I don't always include it in the emails I send out, but I have started, instead of just emailing a response from me, I have started to include all of you so you'll know if I responded or if somehow I missed someone. And what I did earlier, and I plan to start doing again, is refer them to the link on the district website, which is being updated all the time. The task force link has really good information, and going forward over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think there's going to be more and more added. So I think that's a good resource for people. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have, we had a gentleman write to us. When can we expect the parent survey to be posted on the website?
Right. Now, on sometime tomorrow. Sometime tomorrow we'll get it out there. We will.
Okay, thank you. And my final question is, when you talk about a hybrid, has there been any discussion at the task force of a choice situation for a hybrid?
Yes. I think
There has been.
Didn't we say that during the work session, Sharon?
Yeah, and the recent survey is asking parents
Okay.
if they are, are they willing to send their child back to school? Are they not willing? And working with the union, we're going to look at the staff as well. Certainly, there seems to be plenty of room for parents who want to keep their children home. There's going to be an opportunity for them to request that, and that can be honored. And we're going forward with trying to keep everyone safe.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Oden. And then I think Mr. Guarino.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to say, I had a few quick comments. I want to thank Dr. Mosley because, the decisions that have been made have been put safety first, and the district is responding to changing conditions with COVID. And I also want to thank everybody in administration that's been working hard in this, and also the principals of the two schools. There's a lot of pressure. I know there's a lot of pressure, a lot of concerns surrounding graduations and also returning to school. But I hope people out there understand that we are putting safety first based on the resources that we have. And I'm happy that we are having an in-person graduation with all these safety precautions. I just wanted to say those few things real quick. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Guarino. Did anyone else have a response to the superintendent's comments? Okay, no, I just wanted to encourage everybody to go on our website and look at, hold on one second. To go on our website or ETV's website or YouTube and take a look at the task force meeting from yesterday, Monday night. Ms. Bagley from Public Health gave a tremendous amount of information that was extraordinarily helpful, I thought, to me and to the task force as we look at the situation here in Nashua. So giant thanks to Ms. Bagley and also to Ms. Giglio and Dr. Mosley for that. And I'm really looking forward to see in 2 weeks what all of this has percolated into. So thank you. Okay, next is student member of the board comments. Mr. Norris?
Thank you. So I'll be quick today, but so as Dr. Mosley said, the reopening task force met yesterday, and I was very pleased with all of the progress that was being made. It's obviously really, really hard to try to balance the mental health effects going back to school, trying to do the safest thing possible. And I know it's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here, where we all want to go back, but we want to do the safest thing possible. But I was very happy, and I think that we're coming up with some very unique and very thorough options for going back to school. Hopefully we'll have a good suggestion on the 31st. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. The next item on the agenda is the Committee on Budget. I had asked Ms. Quintanilla to put a budget meeting on for Monday, and I'm not sure if that's the most appropriate place for it. I know that we had wanted as a board at one point to talk about the one-time funds and make sure that we have motions so that the aldermen can make their motions. But then also, I was hoping for a little bit of an update about what spending we need to do regarding reopening, but it might be premature. So I guess I am looking for consensus from the board and also Mr. Donovan and Dr. Mosley about we keep that meeting on Monday so that we can approve some of that one-time spending, or should we move it back? Dr. Mosley or Mr. Donovan, do you have an opinion?
Go ahead, Dan. I know you and I had some discussions about this early on in the week.
Yeah, I would keep the meeting if you can make it. There are some items in the one-time funds that are on the list that we'd like to get approved so we can move on and have those funds transferred over so we can spend them.
Okay, so the meeting will be Monday, the 13th at 5:30. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Committee on Finance and Operations. Dottie?
Okay, we had a meeting July 7th. Mr. Smith was there and Mr. Donovan. What happened, and the motion is here, the first motion, we received the reimbursement from the city of the $80,000 it took to construct the emergency overflow hospital at South. And they thought it would be coming later in the year, and it came, I don't know, maybe a week or 10 days earlier than June 30th, and it had to be spent before then, or it went back to the city. So Mr. Donovan and Mr. Smith worked on some ways to spend that money that we probably we need to do, and we're hoping to get approval on that tonight. And Mr. Donovan, if you want to speak a little bit to the individual items that went on open purchase orders or a purchase order so that we could spend that money and not lose it. It was sizable, $80,000.
Okay, there were some cameras at the two high schools. As you know, there was an incident back a couple of months ago in the back of the North High School. These new cameras will allow us to be able to see in the dark, sort of like the the technology that the military has. So it's improving that. It's improving the cameras throughout both of the high schools. So that's what one of the items. Another one is to one of our suppliers to fix one of the air handlers, I believe at New Searles School. They're working on that now. And I don't recall the last item, but there were 4 items on the list. But these were all items that typically we would bring to the board to get approved in advance. But as Mrs. Oden said, we didn't have time to do that. So basically, Mr. Smith spent them on deferred maintenance type items. So now we're sort of reaching out to just get the approval, even though the money's been spent. So it's a little late, but we want to make sure that the board is aware of it and we weren't trying to sneak anything by anyone.
I think there was another item, the tractor that they needed.
Oh, yes, that was you're right. That was the tractor to cut the fields. One of the tractors is on its last legs.
We do have Mr. Smith's memo in our board packet this week. So it goes into detail about every item that was purchased.
So I move to approve the purchase orders listed on the memo from Sean Smith on 7/1/20.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? No? All right, on the motion made by Ms. Oden and seconded by Ms. Johnson, Mr. Guarino, could you call the roll?
Okay, on the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem, Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries 9-0.
And our second motion is to approve the proposed contract with SPC for purchase of 223 copiers and printers.
Second?
I'll second.
Great. Seconded by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion on this motion? I don't see any hands. So, Mr. Guarino?
Okay, on the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem. I think that was a yes. Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond.
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, and the final motion is recommend to approve the fiscal year 20 June transfer report as presented at the 7/2/20 Finance and Operations meeting.
I'll second it.
I don't see any hands for discussion. So go ahead, Mr. Guarino.
Okay, on the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem, Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Geez, I didn't write down when our next meeting is, Mr. Donovan. Do you know when that's scheduled for?
I do. It is scheduled for August the 11th,
Okay.
5:30.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the Committee on Policy. Ms. Bishop, do you have anything for us?
We didn't meet this month, but I think we're meeting in August. I don't think we've established that date yet, but I will let you guys know.
If it's okay with you, Ms. Bishop, can I put you in contact with Anthony? And he can start collaborate with you on that schedule and get him up to speed on the expectations of the policy committee?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bishop. I was just looking at the meetings coming up, and I don't see a policy scheduled yet, so unless I'm missing it. So hopefully you and Mr. Parker can work on that and let me know. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the Committee on Curriculum and Evaluation. Ms. Brown, do you have anything for us?
Nothing to report. We haven't met yet this month.
Okay, great, thank you. And the Committee on Human Resources, Ms. Timmons.
Yes, thank you. Today we met, so I like to suspend the rules because we met today at 5 o'clock. So I need a motion to suspend the rules.
All right, I second that motion. Any discussion? Oh, Mr. Guarino?
Okay, on the motion to suspend the rules, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem, Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, thank you. Today we discussed the administrative recommendation. So I'd like to move to approve Anthony Parker, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education for the 2021 school year and the annual salary of $120,000. May I get a second?
Ms. Gilio seconds. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Okay, excellent. Mr. Guarino?
On the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Ziem? Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Gilio?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Last but not least, I'd like to have a motion to approve personnel recommendation, the revised copy dated July 15, 2020. I need a second on that one.
A second.
Thank you, Ms. Gilio. Do we have any discussion on that? Okay, Mr. Guarino?
On the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Ziem?
Yes.
That was a yes. Okay. Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Gilio?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Timmons. And I'd like to officially welcome Mr. Parker. I think we're all looking forward to working with him. Okay, next is liaison reports. Does anyone have any liaison reports this evening? I'm just going to mention that the JSSBC met briefly on July 1st. July 6th. It was primarily to approve a number of invoices as work has started on both fairgrounds, and then we'll start on Pennachuck in the coming week. I'm trying to think if I have anything else. Let's see, the solar panels are at fairgrounds, and they'll be installed as soon as construction allows for it, but certainly before school resumes. The next thing that they're working on, in addition to the middle school project, is getting the front vestibules, security vestibules for both Fairgrounds Middle School and Pennachuck started in the next week or so. Our next meeting for the JSSBC is on the 23rd at 7 p.m. and I anticipate that we'll have a number of invoices on that evening too, as the summertime is the busiest time for construction. Did I miss anything? Anybody else who's on that committee? Nobody's indicating that I did. So we'll move right along. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business. And I had asked that we talk about what to do about our meetings. Go ahead, Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Madam President. In order to provide a safe live meeting environment for our board members, staff, and the general public while the threat of COVID-19 is still valid, I move that we return to public meetings in the boardroom at Nashua North. The Nashua Board of Education will sit at every other seat around the boardroom horseshoe in their assigned voting order. The first row of the stadium seating will be reserved for any district leadership presenting at the meeting, including the superintendent, followed by his subordinates. When they are actively contributing, they should use the microphone closest to the end of the table. In accordance with RSA 91-A-23, pursuant with the Nashua Board of Education Appendix BEA-R, board members may attend board meetings, committee meetings by electronic or other means. Board members who wish to attend a meeting but who cannot be physically present for the meeting should, if possible, notify the board president or, for a committee meeting, the committee chair at least one day in advance to ensure the appropriate equipment is present at the meeting site. Regular board meetings will be open to the public with seating at one person per row on a first-come, first-served basis. Overflow for public will be in the hallway outside the boardroom while meetings are being live streamed. We will return to public comments pursuant with Nashua School Board Policy BDEH, which states, 15 minutes will be set aside for citizens to address the board about its items on the agenda. This period may be extended by a majority vote of the board. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes per person. Individual speakers will sign up on a first-come, first-served basis on the sign-up sheet provided at the meeting site. If a speaker is signed up for a public comment and there are no seats available in the room to meet safe social distancing guidelines, they may wait in the hall until they are called in for their turn. All meeting participants shall wear a mask or face shield upon entering the school property pursuant with Nashua City Ordinance 020018 until the time that they approach the microphone at a distance of 6 feet away from other people, at which point their mask or face shield is at the speaker's prerogative. When the speaker's 3-minute time limit is up, their face covering should be worn while moving about the boardroom or exiting the building. If there are more speakers who have not been heard at the end of the allotted 15-minute public comment period, they may submit their thoughts in writing to the Board of Education for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown. I'm a little confused because that sounds like a policy and not a motion. So it's very difficult for me to parse out the motion-y part of it because it sounds like we have a couple motions there. We have a motion to return. And we have
I think it's all included in the motion. How we're going to proceed until the threat of COVID-19 is no longer a problem. The most of the quotes in here are things that are already in our policies that we should be providing. I just highlighted them so that we can make sure that we are going along with our policy, which allows people to have public comment and 3 minutes and 15 minutes total, and also in line with our I'm sorry. I was getting really bad feedback. I apologize. And I'm sorry about that. So I think this all needs to be included in the motion so that we can, as we move forward, we already have everything set in place. There are pieces of policies in here, but it's not a change to any policy that we actually already have.
Okay, from a parliamentary standpoint, I don't love it, but Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. I think it spells it out very clearly what exactly we want to do, how the public is going to be placed. I hate to say placed, how the public will be seated in our boardroom. And I think it's a beginning, and we can tweak it as we go. It sets up the groundwork, the perimeters, 3 minutes per speaker, and then if we need to extend it. So then this way the public can hear exactly what we're doing. So there's really, they should have a good understanding. I'm going to support this because I think it's time we get back into the boardroom. I think it's time that the public has a chance to speak to us face to face again. I never was happy when we're Zooming and remoting like this, that the public, there's no interaction with the public. I don't care what the governor says. It really is a violation of the right to know law by the public not being able to interact with us. So I would be more than happy to get back in there. I think it's about time. These Zoom meetings take forever. And again, the public needs to be able to come back and speak with us. It's under the right to know law, and the governor took it away, and we need to put it back now. If they're doing meetings at where? UNH or Dartmouth, wherever the state was having their meetings for the House, and they're back out there, then we should be back out too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Was there a second in there?
Yeah, I'll do a second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question.
Okay, hold on one second. I have Mr. Norris, Ms.
Okay.
Bishop, and Ms. Oden.
Thank you. So I understand where we're coming from here. We want to give all of the public a chance to speak their mind on our policies. So I am in support of going back into the boardroom, giving these people a chance to speak, but I am concerned about the shared microphone that we're expecting the school administrators to be using and the members of the public and public comment. Because I know when you're projecting your voice into the microphone now, your droplets are going on there, and then now we're going to be having multiple people sharing the same microphone. I don't know. I know we said that wearing a mask at the microphone is basically up to the person speaking, but would we be safer and better off? You are using a microphone. Does amplify your voice. Would be better off requiring the mask to be worn there too, because I see that being what the larger safety concern, because everybody else is sitting 6 feet apart. Everybody else is not going in other people's areas, but I do see that as a potential risk factor.
I didn't mute myself. Thank you, Mr. Norris. Ms. Bishop?
In regards to public I actually have two things. In regards to public comment, are we going to be screening people before they come into the schools? I would just be worried about needing to disinfect the schools excessively by having public come in.
I don't know.
I don't think we have like temperature checks and stuff. I don't think we have that capacity.
Like self-screening, so somehow acknowledge that you're not actively symptomatic or haven't been exposed. The same that we would do at the school athletic functions. How would we monitor that?
It's a public area. It's technically public space, so people have the right to be there. If someone would, it's difficult. I don't even know if we can enforce that, to be honest with you, Jen, Ms. Bishop, excuse me. I just don't. Someone could just say they have a cold. It's like, essentially, it's a public space. We can't prevent people who might show symptoms of COVID-19 or even the flu from coming. That's why there's a risk there for that, because we just can't police that and enforce it. So that's something to consider.
And then my other point that I wanted to make was the concern that a lot of the stuff that we're looking at reintroducing into the school district are outdoor things.
Correct.
This is an indoor, obviously, it's indoors. It's not big like the UNH Whittemore Center, which, is several stories up inside. This is essentially a 2-story room with people who may not be actually, responsibly self-reflecting on whatever symptoms they may have appropriately. And I mean, I'm for coming back and doing public comment. worry that we're putting too many people in too small of a space. That's all.
The only thing I can tell you that the school can guarantee is like once the meeting is over, we can clean the we can clean the room. And before the meeting, we can clean the room.
I have a lot of hands that went up. Mr. Donovan, did you have your hand up with an answer to Ms. Bishop?
Well, no, initially, as far as cleaning the room, that shouldn't be a problem. We can do it quickly before and after. That was all I was going to mention.
So I have Ms. Oden and then Ms. Timmons.
Thank you. I want to ask Ms. Brown a question. Did I hear you say one person per row in the boardroom?
That is correct. According to this, just to ensure that we're still 6 feet apart, one person per row. In my mind, it makes sense that one person sits on one side of the row, one person sits on the opposite side, and it would stagger it accordingly going back. And then there would be waiting room. We can even go to the extent to put X's on the floor. We're using that at the grocery stores. We're using it anywhere you go to stand in a line outside the boardroom while the meeting is live if there was a necessity for overflow.
Okay. I guess I would say to that, there are rows on the side with, I believe, 3 seats, maybe 4 seats. You could easily put people there, every other one. But I think the longer rows in the center, I think you could have more than 2 people in there and still safely socially distance. That would be my comment about the only question I had about your comment. And I think
Thank you.
Morris brings up a very valid point about the microphone.
So if I may just address, Madam President, what Ms. Bishop and Mr. Norris mentioned.
The way that we usually operate is that we let people talk once and then you can talk a second time.
It's all right.
So that way everyone gets a chance to have their say and we're not doing back and forth. Does that make sense? Okay, so I have Ms. Timmons next. You're on mute, Ms. Timmons.
I'm sorry, I can't support that. One is we have no way of monitoring people coming into the building. Secondly, who's going to be in the boardroom to say you sit here and you sit here? And thirdly, people coming into the boardroom may not know what to do and how to do it, and there's no one to really monitor them, no one to say sit here, do this, do that. I think that's dangerous. I really will not put myself in harm's way that way. So you guys can go ahead and do that. I will not.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Timmons. And then I had Ms. Brown, and then Ms. Johnson, did you have your hand up again?
Yes, I do.
Ms. Brown, and then Ms. Johnson, and then I have something else I'd like to say.
So this is actually the comment that Stephen and Ms. Bishop made are kind of a little bit related. I thought about the concept of the mic and wondered if we should institute a cleaning in between. But someone actually pointed out to me that as long as we don't have anybody touching the mic, there really shouldn't be a transfer as long as they're wearing their mask. Because once it's on the surface, it's not being expelled back to the surface. That's why I put in the motion that it's at the individual's leisure if they would prefer to keep the mask up or not. I'm amiable to compromising on that and adding back in that we need to clean the microphone. Just recognize that that's going to extend, that's going to limit the public comment time that's available. Let's see, Ms. Bishop. Actually, I can't remember what you mentioned. And I guess this actually has to do with Ms. Timmons as well. You mentioned the safety of people both in the room and also the people that choose to come to the meeting or don't. Well, if there's board members, people are coming in at their own device. They're coming in because it's their choice. we already have a policy in place, RSA 91-A23, that allows board members to attend a committee meeting or a board meeting by any means necessary. So people can keep themselves at their level of comfort, which I think is what's key moving forward here. It's important that we're adhering to the social distancing guidelines and mask wearing protocol as the city has ordained. But we need to make sure that we're giving people the choice for what they need to be doing to keep themselves safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown. And then I have Ms. Johnson next.
Thank you. I remember when we were in the boardroom, right when this whole thing started, some people didn't come in, they didn't feel, because of their health, or they didn't feel safe. They called in remotely by phone, and that's okay. And when we sat around that boardroom, I remember we were passing around the disinfectant wipes. We were wiping down the table, we were wiping down the microphone, we were wiping down our hands, and we were very cautious because we didn't even know that much about the COVID-19 at that point in time. So some people weren't at the meeting that night, but we passed around the wipes, because I remember it was Ms. Bishop that had the wipes that I said they smelled like a pina colada that night. So I think there's ways that we can make it safe. We can do every other row. We can pass around the wipes. We can have the speakers wipe off the microphone before they use it. We can put the disinfectant wipes right there. People go food shopping. People go into stores now. They wear masks. They wipe things off on the grocery carts. But I think it's very important right now for us to be back in there, to welcome back the public at our meetings, and for us to get out of these Zoom meetings. So I'm glad somebody thinks it's funny.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not.
Oh, okay. I just heard this laughing in the background. I didn't know who it
I
was.
apologize.
That's okay. That's okay. But you know, I think that where we are right now, we're talking about kids going back to school one way or the other, whatever method. We have sports out there starting, and we can't get into a boardroom. What kind of message does that send to the public here? I think they want to talk to us already. I think they're frustrated. Look at the emails we're getting. They can't do that one-on-one interaction anymore. And they don't feel like they're being heard. So I'm all for going back in. I mean, I don't know how many phone lines we have that people can call in for. So we have, if we can get 5 at a meeting and 4 can call in, I mean, I think that's a good ratio. And then we'll have plenty of social distancing around the horseshoe. So I'm hoping that my fellow board members will consider this and think that it is an important time that we get back into the building. And we can also make sure that people only go in one direction. We can put tape up or barriers, you know, whatever you want to do, so they know that they can't go down when they come in the building to the right side. They can only go straight over to where our boardroom is at this point in time. And I think people will understand if we put it out on Facebook, on the website, and we put notices at the door. And I think that they would understand at this point in time, and that we're doing it for everybody to have this chance to have the interaction with us again as a board. Thank you.
See, now I can't figure out how to unmute myself. I apologize to everyone. That was my husband in the other room. I meant absolutely no disrespect to Ms. Johnson. I had no idea I was on not mute again. So I have hands. I have Mr. Norris. I have Miss Bishop. I have Miss Quintanilla. Let's go with Miss Quintanilla first, and then Mr. Norris, and then Miss Bishop, and then I also have something to say, but I'm willing to wait.
Thank you. I just want to remind everyone that you do have to have a quorum, which means you will have to have 5 board members present. When you have 4 members on the phone, you're not saving any time. You're still doing roll call, and it's still very cumbersome and awkward. If your vote goes where you have 4 members that will not be attending regardless until this is over, if you have that 1/5 member that makes the quorum, that can come some nights, can't come others, we can't be bouncing back and forth between Zoom and in person. you have to pick a forum and we have to stick with it. It's very hard to cancel a meeting. We're supposed to be giving 24 to 72 hours notice when we cancel. So I just highly recommend that whatever your numbers are, I wouldn't go at a 5-4. You have to have, I would say you almost have to have 2/3, only for planning purposes and for consistency for your board meetings and for everyone. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Ms. Quintanilla, Mr. Norris, and then Ms. Bishop.
All right, thank you. So I just have a couple things. I don't know really what the process is for signing up for public comment too, but would it be possible to somehow allow people or the public to sign up online so you could like reduce even more the amount of shared contact between people? I know that would probably take new platform or whatever, but just an idea. Because obviously, I don't think we should be taking any additional risks more than just coming into the boardroom. So on what we kind of touched on before about the masks and the cleaning, I think that's a small price to pay for having the public in. And I think if we can do whatever we can, whether I think they should be required to wear masks whenever they're in the boardroom, whenever they're in the school, no matter if they're talking or not, and cleaning the microphones, because I think it can be done in a timely manner where it's worth the extra 30 seconds between each person just to reduce any possible cases that could come out of. And one just kind of final thought, I guess. Are we married to going in the boardroom? I know the technology is there to live stream it, technology is there to talk on the microphones.
Point of order.
Ms. Brown, what's your point of order?
I believe that Mr. Norris is getting off topic. The motion on the floor is talking about staying in the boardroom.
Mr. Norris is asking questions directly related to technology in the boardroom.
He's asking if we're married to the idea of going into the boardroom.
That's directly on topic. Oh, overruled.
Yeah, so because I know the boardroom is tight, and you could have, say, we move to the auditorium, you could spread out more and have more members of the public there. I guess that's the idea that we want to have. We want to have members of the public there to speak. So that would allow more members to be there, more members to directly view the board, and allow us to spread out. But obviously there'd be a technology concern there. But thank you.
Thank you. Regarding the technology question, we cannot combine both Zoom and the boardroom. So the boardroom is set up that we only have phone lines going in. So if you're not physically present, the only way to participate is via phone. We have a max of 4 because we need 5 people for a quorum. Ms. Bishop?
Is there a reason that we're not doing the same format that the Board of Aldermen are doing in order to bring in public comment?
Well, I would say it was because Ms. Brown interrupted me as I was beginning to speak on this topic earlier. The Board of Aldermen are continuing to meet via Zoom. They're utilizing the waiting room so that people who want to do public comment can log into the Zoom during the public comment period. Yes, Ms. Brown.
I would like to be it to be noted that I was recognized. I did not interrupt you.
Again, you raised your hand while I was speaking, and being a polite person, I turned and said, yes, what is your issue? In case you had like a point of order, for example. Anyways, let me just back up. I have 2 issues with this motion, and I can't support it. The first is it's not a motion, it's a policy. Motions are short like tweets. Like they need to be 170 characters or less-ish, right? Because that's how much room we have on our website and our recording ability. So they need to be short. 2, I think we have 2 separate questions going on here. One is the question of public comments, of which I completely support and have said from the beginning, we need to figure out a way to do that. The aldermen have solved that problem by utilizing the Zoom waiting room. And then the second question is the safety and efficacy of going back in. And I don't think that we ought to be voting on them together. So I just think the motion is, I just think it's an improper motion, so I'll be voting against it. So did anyone else have anything to say before we take the roll? No? Okay. Oh, Ms. Giglio?
Hi, I just wanted to throw out something that's another alternative, if I may, that it's a little different from what the aldermen are doing. But you all probably know that I'm the recording secretary for the Chelmsford School Committee, and they have been meeting up until recently on GoToMeeting or a Zoom format. And what they've been doing all along since they went to that format was they allow the public to email questions or issues that they want discussed at the meeting to either the superintendent or the president of the board ahead of time, like, a couple of days ahead of time or the earlier that day, for one of the two public meeting sessions. And then they also are allowing people to email the president and the superintendent during the course of the meeting if something comes up during that meeting that they feel they would like to see addressed. I know it's not perfect because it's still not in person, but it seems to be working pretty well for Chelmsford. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Ms. Giglio. Perhaps that could be a motion at some point. Okay. Mr. Gorvino, I think everyone has spoken at least once, if not twice on it, except I didn't hear from Ms. Oden or Ms. Ziem or you, Mr. Gorvino. So did anyone else have anything to say before Mr. Gorvino calls the roll? Okay, I hear nothing. I apologize. My husband is still on the phone in the other room. I'm sure everyone can hear him. Go ahead, Mr. Gorvino.
Okay, on the motion, Mr. Guarino votes no. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem? Was that a yes? I didn't hear it.
I think she said yes.
Okay. Ms. Bishop,
No.
Ms. Giglio,
No.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
No.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons. Ms. Timmons, you're on. You're still.
That would be a no.
I have 5 no's and 4 yeses. The motion fails.
It sounds like the board is split on this issue. I wonder if a divided motion would work, would be more palatable for the board. I see that Ms. Johnson had her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I would like to make a motion that the board returns to our board meeting room at our next meeting and our committee meetings really as soon as possible.
I object to the question. We
I
just,
do too.
we just had a-
No, she said to split it up.
Wait, oh, I'm sorry. Let me do one person at a time. Mr. Guarino, what is your objection?
My objection is that we already took this up to return to our board meetings.
See, that was my entire concern with Ms. Brown's motion. Ms. Brown's motion was to return to meetings in person with a number of stipulations and number of stipulations for like where people sit and who's going to go where and public comments and how that's going to work. It was a very long and broad motion. And we said no to the long and broad motion. It's entirely possible that certain members might say, yes, we vote to return in person and we're going to trust administration to figure out how to do that safely. Does that make sense? They're different.
Yeah, I think they're the same thing. I mean, that was the main part of her motion was that we returned to the board, and we just took up that question and we voted it down. So I don't understand why we're repeating the same question. To me, it's the same thing. It's to return to in-person meetings. It's basically the same motion, and I think we just voted it down. So I don't know why we shouldn't take it up again.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. I really think it's a split that she's suggesting that we split the question. Ms. Johnson, what?
She didn't suggest we split the motion. The motion was stated as she spoke and we voted on it and it didn't pass. So that should be the end of that motion. We need to move on to something else.
Right.
Well, I don't agree, excuse me, but I don't agree on this because you had called me before Ms. Timmons came on.
Yes,
We-
people are now speaking out of turn. So go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you very much. We had a motion that was a big motion. And I agree with you, Mr. Raymond, that there was a lot of pieces to it. So I took that motion, and you can always bring it back to the table without all of it in there. And I'm just making the motion that we return as soon as possible to our committee meetings and full board meetings to at the high school. And that's the whole motion. Simple, clean, and that's it. And again, outside the motion, or you can put it in the motion, the people who feel that they don't want to return, we have 4 lines. If we have a quorum, then we can get back in there. I mean, thank you.
Okay, so that was seconded by Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown, did you also want to speak?
No, I think my opinion is pretty clear.
Okay, Mr. Norris?
So is it possible to figure out, I know we tried to do this last time, but is it possible to separate out the stipulations before we do the motion here? Because I know that could determine what the board member's opinion is on the topic. If masks are required, that could swing somebody's opinion here. I think this seems kind of broad to be voting on before we have, obviously we had stipulations in the last one, but I think if we were to separate them out and do them first, I think that would be more palatable.
So I will say that the mask ordinance is still in effect in Nashua. So there's no discussion needed on whether or not masks are required. They are required in Nashua, and there are penalties for people who don't wear them. So they would be required for any in-person meetings that we might have. I'd also say that the aldermen are discussing returning to in-person for committee meetings first and seeing how that goes, and then the large meetings once social distancing is available. Okay. My other tiny thing is that I want to allow this motion as opposed to saying that it is the same as the previous motion, because this one doesn't include the public comment section. And I think that that could be its own motion as well. Like, we could certainly, whether this passes or not, we can discuss public comments via Zoom or public comments via in person. Does that make sense? Go ahead, Mr. Guarino.
I move to table this motion.
I second it.
Okay, discussion on tabling the motion of returning to in-person meetings. Ms. Johnson.
Okay, I'm just going to make this very clear. We're stifling the rights of the people to come in and talk to us under the right to know law. If in fact we didn't have the executive order here, we would have had the people and the comments. People are getting frustrated out there that they can't come in and they can't give comments to the elected officials. That's right, we're the elected officials. We work for them. They don't work for us, we work for them. And when we don't have that, give them that right to come in and talk to us and give us their opinion, and now they're angry, and the emails, they want to be able to face us already. They want to talk to us in person about the kids going back to school. They wanted to talk to us in person when it came down to the kids graduating, and they didn't have that opportunity. And now we're going to say to them, they can't come in when we're all going to be wearing masks. There's an ordinance out there that we have to wear masks, and we're saying, no, you can't come in. We're going to take every precaution that we would do it even if our students are back in school. That they do in the grocery store. People go in the grocery store, they go shopping, they wipe down the carts. Now, they wipe down the counters.
Point of order. The motion is on the table.
Point of order here. I'm explaining why they can come in.
Point of
Then we
order.
wipe down everything.
About debate.
You know, the bottom line is that people need to come back in, and we should open it up again.
Godin had a point of order that
Stop. Everybody stop for a second.
Well, I just wanted to say that Ms. Oden had a point of order that the table is not debatable.
It isn't?
That's what Ms. Oden.
Okay, I apologize. If it,
Not debatable.
God.
No, I said, I think the motion to table is non-debatable, but
Thank
I'm
you.
not sure.
Well, the benefit of being here is that I can just. Wait, whoever is talking, I cannot hear.
That's
Ms. Deem?
Mrs. Eam,
Yeah, Mrs. Deem, you keep going back and forth on mute.
try to hold your space bar on your computer.
Can you hear me on that?
Yes.
I think we should have a class on technology first for all this. I was saying it is my understanding that it is not debatable. I agree with Mrs. Oden. And the reason for that is to avoid just what is happening here. It goes in the end to the votes. Everybody knows what their position is. So just find out what it is and move on so that we don't make ourselves look bad. When we bicker like this, we make ourselves look very, very bad, and it's not a good role model for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deem. I will accept the wisdom of Ms. Deem and Ms. Oden and their experience on this, and I apologize. I should have known off the top of my head that the motion to table is not debatable, but I got summer brain, I guess. So on the motion to table, Mr. Guarino, can you call the roll?
Okay, on the motion to table, a yes would be to table the motion. Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson?
No.
Ms. Ziem?
Hold
Ms.
it. Oh,
Did she
did you
say?
get
I
it?
think she said no.
Okay.
Ms. Bishop?
No.
Ms. Gilio?
No.
Ms. Brown?
No.
Ms. Raymond?
No.
Ms. Oden?
No.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
I have 2 yeses and 7 nos. The motion is not tabled.
All right. Does anyone have anything to add that has not been said already on the
Yes.
motion to return? Mr.
Yes.
Guarino, then Ms. Bishop.
Okay, as far as public comments go, there are ways that we can have public participation in our Zoom meetings and electronic meetings. We don't need to have in person meetings to have public input into our meetings. We can allow that. There's a lot of flexibility there where people can either submit questions, as was said before. I think Mr. Norris had given us indication, and you were also telling us how the aldermen are doing it. You know, they're getting, the aldermen and all the women are getting input into their meetings electronically. So this is not to stifle anyone's free speech or anything like that. It's just not true. This is about safety. This is about safety first. And I'm ready to go back to in-house meetings when it's safe to do so. When we really are safe to do so. When we start getting loose about this COVID thing, we start to see the number of cases go up. And we have an obligation to be safe and to keep people safe. This is about life and death. Okay? That's what it's about. We need to keep our people safe. We need to keep the public safe. And that's what this is about. Not about infringing on anyone's rights. People can talk to it. We have our telephone numbers are public. They can call us. So this is not about infringing on anyone's rights. And I resent that people think that I'm trying to prevent people from their First Amendment rights. Just not true. We're trying to keep it safe like we've always been. Safety comes first. And I do not want to see the COVID cases in Nashua start to spike again. After all the hard work that we've done, I think it's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. Ms. Bishop? And then Ms. Brown.
So I'm wondering, and I'm just visualizing in my head, is there a way to not have in-person public comment? Like, let's say we show up at the Horseshoe, public comment is a Zoom application that's projected onto the screen behind us, and people can sign up that way. Is that technologically doable in our building. That's how we've been doing it at work.
I don't know. I just don't know. I believe we would need a dedicated laptop hooked up to it and someone to run that meeting, because I couldn't do both at the same time. But Mr. Rodriguez has left, so I don't know that we can have the answer this evening. Go ahead, Ms. Kinsella.
I think we would have to talk to ETV as well. At one point, I remember them saying there's no way we can conjoin the two, but I could double check with them again for you.
Yeah, I think I remember that as well. I'm sorry, Ms. Bishop, I don't have the answer right now. Did you have anything else?
No, I'll hold it. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Brown and Ms. Oden.
I'll concede and go after Miss Oden. She can go first.
Okay. I think Ms. Kinsella brought up an important point. The vote was 5-4. It's very close. You just can't say you're going to have meetings if you're that close to the number you need to hold the meeting. You have to have a majority. I think maybe a good compromise would be to, at this point, let people give public comment on Zoom with the waiting room. I know that will take a little bit more time, but we will get public comment. And if that is all working well and the numbers go down, let's look at it again in a couple of weeks. Quite frankly, I hate Zoom meetings. I just think they're very sterile. I think getting back to the boardroom would do well. I'm obviously over 60. I have diabetes. You know, there are issues, but you know what I do? I wear a mask. I make sure I socially distance. And I think that can be done for board members in the room. And I think we could try to set up the room for people to come in to speak. But until then, if we want public comment, at least use the waiting room and make sure you have enough people that if you're going to go back to the boardroom, you have to have more than 5 votes. I think Ms. Kinsella is absolutely right. So that's only my input at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Oden, Ms. Brown, and then Mr. Guarino.
Thank you, Madam President. So, and I realize the motion on the floor right now is to return to the boardroom, but it seems like it's spun a little bit because people are voting separately on whether they want public comment or not. I think the reason in favor of having us live in a boardroom is because there's a level of commitment that comes, an organization that comes from a community person coming in to the school and creating a physical presence with us in the room, as opposed to an online presence. I think there are a lot of security issues that I'm not in favor of, and I'm not in favor of electronic public comments. I think that it could allow things to spin out of control. The only way I would even consider voting for that, and this is a separate motion, I understand that, would be if we were to adhere very, very strictly to our 15-minute rule on our 3-minute guidelines pursuant with our current policy. Because I think that you could easily, there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there, that it's a lot easier to come to public comment when it's in the comfort of your own home. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Guarino, and then Mr. Norris had something to add, I believe.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to reiterate my objection to this motion because it's basically the same motion we voted down. It has all the same problems. And I hope that my fellow board members will vote no. And there's going to come a time when we are going to be back in the boardroom. I'll be right there. But it's got all the same problems that we just voted down. And I think it's wrong to keep to have a vote on a motion and then bring it right back up again. And I object to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. Mr. Norris?
Thank you. So I said this in the chat, but I still think it's not very practical for us to be voting on whether to go back into the boardroom, whether not to, regardless of what your opinion is, without knowing any of the stipulations. I feel like that leaves way too much up to chance. So I think a better alternative would be to first vote on, say, if we go back into the boardroom, we need this policy. If we go back into the boardroom, we clean the microphones. We see people like this separately first, so then we can have a full outline of, okay, we've already approved these two policies, three policies about when we do go back into the boardroom, and then we can then fully vote on, say, okay, do we want to go back into the boardroom where we've already approved these policies, we know what it's going to look like. I just think this seems way too broad right now to have any idea of what anything will really look like. We don't know what public comment is going to look like. We don't know how we're going to seat. I think splitting them up, but also doing these first is a way more practical option and allows people to actually know what it's going to look like inside the boardroom before voting on it.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. I tend to agree with you. I think that we need the answers to Ms. Bishop's questions, to your questions, to other questions before we decide on whether or not to go back physically. We also need to have an idea of how many people are going to be able to regularly go. Not to cast aspersions on anyone or say anything negative, but the majority of our board members are in the high risk category. So we want you guys to be safe. I myself am not certain about the safety of me returning to the boardroom. As many of you know, I have multiple sclerosis, and so I have to be very careful. So I'm very torn on this, but I'm very committed that we have to have public comments. I really don't like not having public comments. So to me, I think I would like the answers to the questions for our safety and the safety of the public before we take the vote, before we decide to return. And then I would like to consider public comments as a separate issue. So go ahead, Ms. Johnson, and then I think Ms. Bishop, and then everyone will have talked a lot of times and we should take a vote.
Well, we're talking about bringing the public comment in. Why haven't we done it all this time? Like the Board of Aldermen, we were told we couldn't do it. We couldn't get it in here. I mean, so we've been months on remote and we haven't had any public comment. So I'm a little bit confused. So now we're talking about trying to bring it in, but we didn't do it before and we couldn't do it before, but now we're talking about we should be able to. If it's confusing to board members, it's got to be even more confusing to the public. I'm in the category of 66 because of age, being susceptible to all this. But I look at it this way. I got a mask on. I'm going to, I guess, take my chances, but I don't feel that I'm at that high of a risk. I do what I have to do. But I just feel it's in the best interest of us, the board, to be back there. I understand what Mr. Norris is saying. But those are policies that are already on the books. I mean, the 3-minute comment period, 15 minutes. The difference is that we can have our maintenance, Mr. Smith, go in there, survey it, and tell us exactly where everybody can be and to scope it out. And that shouldn't really have to be a vote of the board because we have people come in there prior to. So you X marks the spot where people can sit, and that's about it. I mean, we really have to focus on us to decide if we're going to go back in there before you do all the other legwork. Because if we're not going in there, everything else is a moot point. So that's how I look at it. But there shouldn't be any reason why, with Mr. Smith helping us to set that whole thing up with the high school. That's just my opinion. I think it's time that we go back in there. I think the public is waiting for us to get back in there, and I think they have a lot to say. And I'm sure there's going to be emails saying about people who were fighting for them and people who were not fighting for them. That's just my opinion, but that's how they see it. You could shake your head, no, but that's how people see it, and we all know it. There are people who fight, and there's people who don't fight for them.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Bishop?
So my last comment, I swear, is I just want to highlight the fact that the largest clusters of outbreaks that we're seeing are in long-term care facilities, that are full of LNAs, RNs, masked up adults, proper medical equipment is being used throughout, and they're not able to contain a virus. And we're expecting us to go back to school with, or back to these meetings with very minimal oversight in regards to the medical piece. How can we expect long-term care facilities to keep their people safe when we can't even do it? Or how are we expected to keep us safe when we can't even ensure it in the long-term care facilities? So nobody has a good handle on this. There's no right answer. And the least we can do is just err on the side of caution. No one gets hurt that way. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bishop. I think it sounds like everybody knows where their position is, and we can go ahead and take a vote on the question of returning to in-person meetings at the high school as soon as possible, which I think I paraphrased it appropriately.
Sounds right. On the motion, Mr. Guarino votes no. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
No.
Ms. Gilio,
No.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
No, not yet.
Ms. Oden,
I'm going to say yes, but obviously the votes aren't there. So
Ms. Timmons. Ms. Timmons, you.
No.
5 noes and 4 yeses, the motion fails.
Okay, Ms. Timmons, you're on mute.
We had some unfinished business, and I was wondering if we can go into non-public. I can't hear you.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'm losing my mind. Yes, I would like to make a motion, however, to return to having public comment now that we
Can I second Ms. Timmons?
Ms. Timmons didn't make a motion. She asked to move on. And I said, first, I'd like to make the motion on public comments.
Okay.
Did you make a motion, Ms. Timmons?
Yeah, I made a motion to go on into non-public under RSA 91A3A and RSA 91A3B. I think we really need to go into non-public.
Okay.
Second.
All right. So I apologize, Ms. Timmons. I didn't understand that that was a motion. Is this, and that was seconded by Ms. Johnson, is this related to something that's on the agenda?
Yes, in a sense.
Okay, then I'm going to ask the board to wait until we get to that part of the agenda. We have the question of public comments, and we still have the question of a training that we'd like the board to do on our agenda that comes up before the non-publics. So, Mr. Guarino?
Okay, so we're going, this is for non-public?
This is the motion to take things out, basically take things out of order and go into non-public now.
Okay. On the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson,
I guess so, yes.
Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
No.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
No.
okay, Ms. Raymond,
Yes, sounds timely.
Ms. Oden,
no.
Ms. Timmons,
This is to go into non-public, this yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yeses and 1, 2, 3 noes. Motion carries.
Okay, so we have a motion to go into non-public. We will have to return to public after this motion because we still have public items to take care of this evening. So we are back in public. It is 8:11 p.m. and I'm looking for a motion to seal the minutes of our last non-public session.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay. If you could take the roll, please, Mr. Guarino.
On the motion to seal the minutes, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons. I think that was a yes. Motion carries 9-0.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Guarino. We only have a few more items to get through this evening. The first is I am looking for a motion to resume public comments while we continue to, well, just to resume public comments in our meetings.
Seconded.
Okay. I'll make the motion then. Seconded by Ms. Bishop. We've talked this to death. Does anyone have anything else to say? Ms. Brown?
I want to make it clear I am 100% for public comments. However, I think I am against public comments in an electronic format. I think it is important for people to be in the room. You know, I hope that there's people on this board who are willing to go support our local businesses wearing masks and out into the community and start engaging in life again. I understand that people aren't ready for that, and that's fine if that's the way this board feels. You're not there yet either. But I want to be clear, I'm going to be voting against this motion, not because I am not 100% in favor of public comments. I am in favor of being back in the boardroom. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown. Anyone else? Mr. Guarino, and then Ms. Johnson.
I too am in favor of being back in the boardroom when the time comes. I am not going to ask anyone to do anything I wouldn't do myself. Okay. But safety comes first right now. And right now, I think things are we're still making plans about opening school. And I am for public comments if we have to do them in electronic format, then I think we should do them. I'm not against hearing from the public, but we are under unusual circumstances. And I hope people understand the unusual circumstances that we're under right now. So I'm not going to ask any teacher, any person who works in the school district to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. But when the time comes, I think there will be a time that will come when we'll be back in the boardroom. But right now, I want to see what the committees say about opening school, and I want to see what resources we have, and and then I'll be ready to make that decision. But I am going to vote in favor of this motion to resume public comments. However, we can do it, electronic format, whatever. So, thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Guarino. Ms. Johnson, then Ms. Gilio.
Thank you. You're right. I wouldn't ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do. And I do a lot of things, so I guess I'm just not afraid out there. I think if we're going to do electronic comments now, why don't we do it back when? Why are we starting it now? We're starting talking about it now because some of us are really saying it's time to get back out there. If we're talking about opening school and we're allowing kids to start sports, and we as a board needs to show that we're willing to go out there and open up for meetings again. We're going to be wearing masks. We'll be cleaning down the counters. We'll be doing everything that we need to do. And we can even ask Bobby Bagley to supervise this, since she's an expert on this. I haven't decided which way I'm going to vote right now. I'm thinking about this. I want that public comment in there, not just emails that we can't answer during the meeting. I want to hear people telling us already. I want to hear their voices. And so I think it's time. I think it's time that we have to show the community that we're willing to step up to the plate and say that we're willing to come out, and we welcome them back in with the masks. Thank you.
Heather, may I say something?
If Ms. Gilio doesn't mind,
No, you can add me to the back.
Okay, so Ms. Gilio and then you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I just wanted to clarify that the motion that we're looking at is to allow the public to comment through Zoom by coming into a waiting room and being allowed in to comment. So we actually do hear their voices.
Yes, and we would see, if they have a camera on, we would see their face. They would have to identify themselves.
We could also see them. And although, you know, it's unfortunate that we didn't do this sooner, I think the aldermen just started doing it recently. And so I don't think it ever occurred to me that we could do that until I heard that the aldermen do, but I am certainly in favor of that. So.
Thank you, Ms. Gilio. I definitely think there's been a technological learning curve for everyone as we use these video chats. And so now we know, and when you know better, you do better. Ms. Deem?
With all due respect to every member of this board, I beg you, I plead with you not to repeat yourselves over and over and over again. We've been in this meeting an awful long time. You know, I feel like a dried up, I've been sitting here. I didn't even eat dinner. And I feel like you everyone have the same opinion you started out with when we first started this discussion. And I just beg you to please, if you say it once, people agree with you or they disagree. They don't change their minds because you say the same thing 5 times. They just don't. And what they do change their minds about is wanting to be on the board. So again, I beg you, please, don't repeat yourselves.
Thank you, Ms. Deem. I adore your advice. Ms. Oden?
Thank you. In the spirit of compromise, I'm going to support this. I would rather go back to the boardroom. I don't think the support is there. I think this Kinsella was right in the fact that you're going to need at least 6 votes to do that logically, but I would like to have the public opinion. So public comment. So I will support this to move it along. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Brown, and then go ahead.
Can I make a friendly addition to the motion that we adhere very closely to board policy BDEH?
That's the one regarding public comments?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I mean, we have to. If we don't, then
what I'm specifically want to focus on is making sure that we line this up and it does not becoming, I mean, already we're kind of consumed with our own selves in all this meeting back and forth. And then we have to start adhering to our board policies because we're not doing it. So I would really love to make sure that that's part of this motion, is that we will be adhering to Nashua School Board Policy BDEH even during a electronic public comment session.
Sure. Okay. I don't have a problem adding that. Ms. Bishop?
Just in regards to that, I was watching another board meeting somewhere across the pond, where there was a timer and it went off, and if you were speaking into a microphone, the microphone got shut off. Or if you were on camera, the camera got shut off. Do we have the ability to, I mean, I know in person-to-person meetings, it's harder to get somebody to stop talking when it's been there 3 minutes. But would we be able to utilize the mute function that Jessica wants us to do on the Zoom meetings?
So 2 things. One, we cannot do that in the technology is not set up that way in our actual boardroom. Regarding our Zoom meetings, I don't have the capacity to mute people or kick them out. I'm not the host. I don't think it would be very nice of us to do that unless people are really abusing the privilege. We have some First Amendment issues there, and I'm sure Steve Bolton or Tom Clausen could give us a lot of advice about that. But there's a lot of First Amendment issues about cutting people off that we have to be careful of. The only place I know of that uses a timer is the planning board, and even with their timer, people continue.
Just to go up at the State House, they put aside time for public comment, and if you choose to be the person that speaks the whole 20 minutes, when that 20 minutes is done, the rest of the list just falls off and it's acknowledged what side you're supporting. Maybe we can look at something like that.
It might be worth looking at the policy BEDH in a policy meeting.
I'll put it on the list.
Any other comments before we take the roll? I don't see anybody, so go ahead, Mr. Guarino. The motion is to return to having public comments in our meetings with adhering to our policy BEDH.
Okay. On the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson?
Yeah.
Okay, I think she said yes. Ms. Ziem?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Gilio?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, thank you. And I think we all ought to reflect on Ms. Ziem's advice. We just passed something unanimously, but we had to talk about it for 23 minutes first. And so that's not like the best way to run our meetings. Okay, the other two items on our agenda this evening. Under new business, the city had a diversity and cultural competency training, but the school district did not get to have it. And I would like the board to have this training. And I believe that it's Ms. Bagley who does it from Public Health, who we all know, and Chief Carignan. And they're willing to work with the board to provide this training. Ms. Timmons, can you give us a little bit of information about when they're available?
I think they were waiting on the board. I don't have a date.
Okay.
Yet, but as soon as we say okay, I think they're ready to conduct the training, but it's on us when we want to have it.
Oh, gotcha. I was hoping that we would have a couple of dates from them that we could just vote and choose which one works best for most of us.
Preferably on a Saturday.
Oh, they would like to do it on a Saturday?
Because more people can join and, people work during the day. And
okay. Right. Ms. Johnson?
Yeah, sometimes Saturdays can be rough for me because I don't know my work schedule. They only give us out like once now. Now on this training is diversity and cultural training. Is there going to be anything else into this training, or is it just that?
No, it's prompts, it's a video, and it is engagement. So you have to have it in person.
Okay, but I mean, are we doing anything as far as religious training too for people being anti-Semitic in the area also?
If you get that training lined up, I think we can do that as well.
I don't know where to go. I just thought that maybe, with this whole thing, it would be
that might cover that area. I really believe it does.
I would like that too, because I think that's a very big thing in this school district. I mean, that's in the city also. Excellent. It would really help, I think, the community if we combined all this together.
Okay.
I think it's part of it anyway.
Okay, right. That would be great. Thank you.
Does anyone have any objections to Ms. Timmons speaking to Ms. Bagley and Chief Carignan about what Saturdays they have available so that she can come back to us with some dates? I don't see any objections. Ms. Gilio, did you have a comment?
I'm sorry, I didn't know that if we need a motion on this or not.
I don't think so. It's a training. We don't typically have motions. We're going to be having a training, I think, next month from the New Hampshire School Boards Association. we don't need a motion to schedule that either. I put it on the agenda thinking that we would have a couple of dates to choose from, but it sounds like there was a miscommunication there. So I apologize.
Okay, that was my only question. I was going to make the motion. Thank you.
Yep, Ms. Brown?
Thank you. I'm all for the training. I think it's going to be great and really interesting. Are we going to schedule it after everyone in this meeting feels comfortable coming back together again and meeting live? Because I feel like really that's where we're going to get the best quality of this experience as opposed to in a Zoom meeting. So will it be after we reinstate live board meetings?
No, it is not Zoom. They cannot do this training in Zoom. They would like to use the cafeteria or the auditorium, but it have to be live. It cannot do this type of training because there's a video involved as well, and they're doing social distancing as well. So.
Okay. Can we work with Ms. Quintanilla to have them either give Ms. Quintanilla directly some dates that she can email out to the board to schedule that, and then we can people can decide if they're comfortable going or not, because it's a training. It's not a quorum is not necessary. So
Can I ask how long this is? Is it like a 2 hour or 3 hour?
I believe it's 4. I'm not quite sure at the time, but I think at least 4 hours.
Ms. Giglio is nodding her head and telling us 4 with her hands. Okay. So moving on, the last item on the agenda this evening is we have a request for a change of school assignment that is in non-public. I don't believe that we will have a vote in public afterwards except to adjourn. Go ahead, Ms. Brown.
I'd like to move that we move the board member comments to before we move into the non-public.
I think that's fine. Does anyone have an objection to doing board member comments now and then going into non-public immediately thereafter? No one's saying that they object. I will go as I see in my screen. So that's how it's going to go. That gives it you, Ms. Timmons. You're on my upper left-hand corner. Do you have?
I want to be over pretty quickly, so no, I have no comments.
Okay. Then Ms. Giglio.
I have no comment either.
Okay. Mr. Guarino?
I just want to say that I am very much for going back to our boardroom. However, we have to look at what's happening, the conditions that are out there. We have seen some states in our country that are looking at COVID cases at 1,400%. And I think it's Florida. So we have to be very careful about opening up too soon. And we've done a lot of work in the past 4 months or so, and a lot of people have been staying home, and we've been taking precautions. And I would hate that we do something rash and open up too soon. I'm going to be looking at what our committees tells us about opening up school very carefully. And I'm not going to vote for anything that's going to put anyone in danger, whether it's a teacher, whether it's an administrator, whether it's our students. So I agree with what Ms. Bishop said earlier. I am going to make an error on the side of safety. That means keeping everyone safe. So I think we need to be very careful about how we open up and listen to what the experts tell us, and take it slow and take it rational and thinking it out before we act. And so having said that, I am looking forward to the graduation on August 1st, and I think we're taking precautions there. And I think there will come a time that we'll open up school and we'll have the board back in the boardroom. But I just want to make sure that we do it right. And we don't have a situation where we find ourselves again in Nashua or New Hampshire going the opposite way. Having COVID cases start to spike again. Do not want to see that. So that's why I make the decisions the way I make them. And I hope people understand. Maybe some people understand, maybe some people won't. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Ms. Brown?
Thank you, Madam President. So the first sentence of my Board of Education campaign website last fall said, educating youth is one of the most effective ways to build a strong, healthy community. I believe that statement so much that when the League of Women Voters asked, why do we provide public education? My answer was providing access to public education puts our youth on a path to become contributing members of society as adults. Whether young people choose vocational, collegiate, or alternative careers, we should prepare them to enter the workforce and adult life with a strong foundation. I believe that I have a responsibility to my constituents to continue to fight for the ideals that I built my campaign on. I am responsible for seeing that public funds are spent appropriately and that the city gets the best return on their investment, that the community is strengthened by ensuring that students, regardless of income, have access to high quality education. As we move forward in the next few weeks, planning for upcoming school year, we must focus our efforts on finding a hybrid model that allows all children access to education they deserve. Right now, area parochial and private schools are filling up with waiting lists with children leaving our public school system. Families who have options to look elsewhere for a good education but hold the same values and esteem as everyone in this meeting for unique opportunities for growth and interaction that are only afforded by public schools. Parents who have spent decades building their careers trying to choose which parent should stay home to homeschool their families. Parents of needs are hiring governesses and tutors to care for their kids. Parents are creating collaborative homeschool tutoring pods to make through their neighborhood. And they have the luxury of options to trudge through and make it work. Not everyone in Nashua has the privilege of that choice. And access to high quality learning is a constitutional right. It is the path that is going to build the foundation for the next generation in our community. I will continue to advocate in favor of live education for those who want it, but especially for those who need it. I believe in the valuable human factor of that live instruction provides. Teachers are teachers to their soul, and everyone brings something unique to their table that cannot be replicated through a screen. The COVID crisis may be over one day, but the damage to the education of those without full-time support cannot be undone. We cannot afford to continue widening the educational gap between the haves and the have-nots. We need to make sure that families who have options have a reason to stay in our schools, and that the families who don't have options have the flexibility to continue working in the community and trust that this district will help put their kids on the right path to be the next generation of leadership in Nashua. Thank you.
Sorry, I muted myself. Thank you, Ms. Brown. And next I have Ms. Johnson.
How can I compete with what Ms. Brown said? You know, I think it's very touching what she said, and I think probably has a lot that many of us feel on this board. I too, I'm concerned about what's coming up. I'm concerned about parents making that decision with the remote learning and what's going to happen with their jobs and kids going back to school. I mean, people have to work. Some parents have to get back to work. I feel that this is a big learning curve for all of us with this COVID-19. I would never ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do. I think this was a very good meeting again tonight. I mean, I think we all get our opinions out here and how we feel, and that's what makes this board good, because we all don't think alike, and we shouldn't all think alike, because if we did, there wouldn't be a board that makes good decisions here. So in spite of that, we might repeat ourselves sometimes. We are working for the good of this community. And I truly feel the sooner we can get back into our little nest egg in the high school, the better off we will be. Because I think what's happening is that being remote here is challenging. And, you know, we don't have that like we talk about the kids, they need that personal interaction. That's what human beings are all about, personal interactions. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Bishop?
I don't have much to say. I just want to say I think I'm really excited to see what the task force brings to us. I think everybody's working really hard during a summertime where we're not used to working this heavily. So I want to thank the school district for all their hard work, and I'm looking forward to what you guys are going to present to us. Thank you.
Okay, people just moved, so hold on one second. I don't like how the boxes move around on my screen. Ms. Seem. Let's skip Ms. Seem and go to Ms. Oden. Ms. Seem or Ms. Oden, are y'all with us this evening? Or did we lose you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to unmute.
That's all right. Go ahead, Ms. Oden.
It's been a long evening. I just want to say, when Mr. Garino said we've been doing this 4 months, it seems like 4 years to me. This has been the long, I know I didn't gain 4 years of life, but boy, it feels like I've been punished before 4 years with this COVID. So no, I have nothing else to say.
Thank you, Ms. Oden. We'll try Ms. Zeem one more time. Okay, I don't hear Ms. Zeem. I just wanted to point out that the National Public Library is open again. They are allowing a limited number of persons inside at a time. You have to wear a mask, but they do have their entire catalog available. So if you are looking for children's books or books for yourself or for older students, please stop by the public library. And they will actually, you can go on their website and put your list and they'll bring it out to your car. Or you can go in small groups, maintaining physical distancing. So I encourage everybody to do that. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the Soup Kitchen and Shelter is running their backpack program again this year. Thank you so much to the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter. So if anyone would like to donate, they are accepting donations of backpacks and pencils and erasers and all of those school supplies that kids need. They have an entire list on their website of what they're accepting and when you can drop it off. So those are my board member comments this evening. So we have one last thing, and that is a request to have a change of school assignment, and that is a non-public. And so I am looking for a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A3K. Ms. Giglio.
So moved.
Okay. I'll second it. Mr. Guarino, can you call the roll?
Hey, on the motion to go into non-public, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Zeem, Ms. Zeem. Okay. I'm going to come back to her. Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Giglio,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes,
I have 8 yeses, 0 no's. Ms. Zeem, I
I'm
think,
still on the board.
cannot hear us. So motion carries 8-0.
All right. So we are in non-public at 8:40 p.m.